choosing the best movie for them, or whether it's the right school we want them to go to, the best values we can give them. So all of these things matter because the habits and behaviors that, you know, they learn as children influence their life later on. So this is just as important for healthy habits around food growing up. So to ensure that our children are healthy when they're adults, they're not dangerously overweight, and they're not falling into the hands of the diet industry or that diet culture. So this is why we are here today. You are all part of the Second Nature programme, so I'm sure you can appreciate and recognise how habits from childhood to adulthood are so vital in influencing our long-term health. So thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us either tonight or later on if you watch this back. So in today's webinar, we're going to offer you insights into the most impactful things we can do as parents or caregivers to help give our children a healthy relationship with food. So we're going to walk you through why setting good habits early on is important, setting a good nutrition foundation, identifying our child's hunger and fullness cues, creating the right mental mode around food, enjoying food, which is so important. And lastly, if we have time at the end, we're going to have a question and answer session. So just a bit about who we are. So my name is Jen. I've been a health coach on the Second Nature programme for about 4.5 years now. I'm a registered and qualified nutritionist. And probably my biggest motivation to do this project is my gorgeous daughter Martha. So as you can see her photo there, which was taken this weekend, got a gorgeous smile there, and I'm hoping that you can't hear her too much because it's her bedtime, but we've got currently Hey Dougie on in the background just to try and keep her calm, so I'm sure a lot of people can relate. So personally, I've been through weaning, food refusal, tantrums, early terrible twos, you name it. But as everyone here is for, I want to create a healthy foundation for her to take on into adulthood. And I'll pass you on to my colleague, Simi.
Yes, hi everyone. So I'm also a registered and qualified nutritionist. I've been a health coach at Second Nature for nearly 4 years now. And yeah, I am also an auntie to 2 gorgeous nieces, which you can see in this picture. They're both turning 1 very soon, so that's exciting. But a lot of my experience with children actually comes from me being a children's volunteer. So I work with children as young as 3 years old, all the way up till 17 years old. And we just work closely together to build some really nice well-being and personal values for them.
Excellent. So let's get started. So in this section, we will discuss why setting good habits during childhood is important. So the reason why we want to ensure that children have healthy habits early on is so that they have a healthy relationship with food later on in adulthood. So I've been working closely with a lady who has a baby boy, and she said something that really resonated with me, in that she needs to do this for him, that she needs to get some good examples and set some good examples for him, but also to do that to work on her relationship with food as a result. So I just wondered if most people here actually do feel the same. So let's have a look at what setting good habits looks like for us. So I wanted to ask you all here, what does a healthy relationship with food look like to you? So just going to give you about 30 seconds or a minute just to type in the chat anything that springs to mind. That's great, Fran. Yeah, not worrying about food all the time. This can be something that can be so time consuming. Food can be on our mind a lot of the time. So thinking about what to eat, am I hungry? Should I have a snack? Excellent, not binging. Thank you so much for these. Having a balance, brilliant. Not feeling guilty, perfect. Not using food as a reward. These are all on our slides, so you're stealing these from us, so it's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Varied diet, excellent, brilliant examples. Excellent. So understanding the balance of foods and having a natural stop button. Love that, having a natural stop button. Excellent. Something that we talk about on the programme is the hunger fullness scale, something that we're also going to be talking about on how to do that with children as well. fantastic. Enjoyment in eating healthily, in looking at food enjoyment. I'm loving all of these. Great. Have we taken a sneak peek of what we've done? So we'll just take you through what me and Simi have already put on the slide here. So first one, seeing food as nourishment, seeing food for what it is, for its role in our life, which is to support us in doing the busy things that we do, especially since we've become parents or guardians. We're constantly on the go, we're thinking about different things. So we need to kind of be nourished in the right way. But also things like finding enjoyment in food, something that we've already touched on. Because let's be honest, food is great. It can make a day, it really can, can't we? If you come home to a nice home cooked meal or go out for a nice meal. So learning to naturally like nutritious food and seeing how it can make us feel can make such a difference. And a lot of people report on the programme that when they eat healthier, they feel healthier. And in turn, when they eat more processed or less balanced foods, it can really have an impact on what makes them kind of feel a bit more sluggish. So the next one, feeling at peace with our food choices and not feeling guilty for having a piece of cake or having a few biscuits at a friend's house when we do actually really want them. Not having distorted thoughts, as you may be aware, is a really powerful part of the Second Nature programme, and it's something that can really help us build a better relationship with food just through having a bit more self-compassion. And the next one, listening to our body's hunger cues and stopping eating when we are full. So we're talking about having a stop button. We can be so used to eating everything in front of us or grazing out of boredom or eating with our eyes, as I've been known to do. So learning how to control this can really help. And then the last one that we've got is not relying on food to manage stress, tiredness, or boredom, any type of emotion. So not using food as a coping mechanism, which is something that we may have created this habit of doing over time. But where does it all start? There are a lot of things we learn as we grow. We gather a lot of behaviour that form the map of how to navigate life. And this includes emotions, food, a lot of things. And it's no different with our eating habits. We've learned from the people that we've worked with on the programme that a big chunk of the habits that come from a lot of better habits came from childhood and how food was introduced to them. So for example, weaning, the first meals that we have at home, habits such as always having popcorn at the cinema, being given their favourite food when they fall over, sweets at grandparents' house, a lot of things. There are lots of examples, I could be here all day, but all of these habits can build up without us even realising. So both myself and Simi have coached hundreds of people on the programme, but we wanted to share some quotes with you that we find that are quite common. The first one at the top is, I was always brought up to eat everything on my plate as food was scarce. It's hard to shake this off when I was made to feel guilty others were going without. This is an interesting one, as a lot of people's families historically were affected by, say, for example, rationing after war or food poverty, and this gets passed down onto us, not wanting to waste food. So we pick at our child's plates there's no wastage. So if you find this is you, I hope a quote from a lady I coached will actually help you. And she once said to me, I turned to myself one day and I thought, it's as much use in the bin as it is in my stomach. But the difference is I'll feel worse long-term if I keep eating it and it's pushing back my goals. I thought that was quite interesting. And the second quote that we've got here is, as a child, pudding was always used as a reward for finishing the main course. At the time, it's great for the parent. They get the outcome they want. The child is happy getting the food that they want. Win-win. But long-term, this may be sending out not the healthiest message. However, it's not just the people that we see in Second Nature. Research also shows that by us parents modelling their behaviour, such as eating food like fruits and vegetables in front of our children, it can make them more likely to want to eat these foods too. Kids want to feel part of the family, one of us. And then another study showed that if we don't allow our kids to have certain foods like sweets or crisps, they're more likely to overeat these foods later on in life, which can lead to weight gain or an unhealthy relationship with these foods. And another example I wanted to share was that I was speaking to a lady in one of my groups who said that she was put on her first diet at the age of 7. And from then on, she was banned certain foods. So then began to eat these foods in secret, as this is something that she still did 40 years on. So as you can see, this is the beginning of how cycles start and the impact of doing these things can have. Truth is, however, we cannot blame it all on parents. There are so many factors that build into our behaviours, and we need to remember that we are doing the best we can. And I think we need to remember that a lot more probably than what we do. There are lots of things that we have no control over. So, for example, supermarkets, a lot of money has gone into figuring out how to market their audience the best they can. For example, putting sweets at a child's eye level, putting favourite TV characters on packaging, money off day trips on chocolate packets, a lot once you actually start realising that it's out there. Also advertising on the TV, but not even just on TV, at bus stops, in magazines, in the shops themselves. We cannot get away from it. But away from this, it's also looking at their peers. So, for example, if a child's friend has a certain food in their packed lunch, or if they go to the shop after school, they're going to want them to feel a part of it and not feel left out. But also things such as food outside the home. So if they go to that friend's house, school lunches if they're provided, or even just going to the shop or a day out with other members of the family. And then lastly, things like fast food restaurants, they're everywhere. And the meals available for kids may not actually be the most balanced. But there are some things we have the power to influence. So Second Nature talks a lot about making small changes, making tiny habits, as these can be so impactful when we build them and practice them. So it's not about being perfect or feeling guilty that we've not done this or doing all of these things at once. It can be impossible. We've got so many other things to think about. But here are a few things that we can control. For example, the language you use around children, reshaping how we talk about food ourselves. So not using words like, I'm being good, I'm not going to have that, or I've been so bad having that pizza. And Simi's going to touch more on this later on. We can also control the types of food we expose to them, having a variety of foods available, for example, having veg at every meal. So this is learned to be the new norm. The atmosphere we create around the eating experience, this is very important, and even from the weaning stage, if we make the atmosphere tense and uncomfortable, the child isn't going to look forward to eating or associate meal times with not being an enjoyable time. And then lastly, behaviours that we model in front of our children. So the foods we eat and the food choices that we make, if we model them, that we have balanced meals, they will learn that this is what adults do. We don't need to be perfect, and you are already a brilliant parent, I'm sure, just by being here, either live, watching it back, or simply going to save for later. We can go onto social media like Instagram, and I know I do this for advice, and we're bombarded by advice. What my child eats in a day, I hate those reels, what they should be doing at this age. And it can bring on parent guilt if our child isn't doing the same. And parent guilt is a big thing, it's real. But it's not about hitting all of the targets all at once or when they should be going on the curve. My child has always been off the curve, but you know what? She's brilliant, she's thriving, and she's doing fantastic. It's making the small changes to help build the healthiest foundation that we can for them. So on that subject, now we're going to talk about setting the right foundation. So as you may be aware, you know the balance plate model is for adults on Second Nature, but we've just devised our own to help you with this. Because their needs are different to ours, they're still growing, they're constantly on the go, either mentally or physically, and it's important that we respect this. So giving them a variety of foods will help them get used to the different foods that there are in the world, and it's about creating the right balanced approach to food. So we're going to talk a bit through this now. So the advice is roughly about third of the plate veg, third carbs, and the other third is made up of protein, fats, and of course a little bit of sugar. So the most impactful things to do are focus on whole foods in their meals and snacks. Try to include a good source of complex carbs, proteins, vegetables, and fats around the thumb size of each meal. Feel free to use the Second Nature recipes, but we do advise to make sure that you reduce the portion sizes to suit their stomachs. Having a plate that is piled high can be quite daunting for a child, but just by offering small amounts, it can feel easier and more manageable. And then if they want a bit more, they can always ask for seconds. As a rough guide, a portion is about the size of their child's fist, so it could be interesting to look at kind of your child's portion size next time. And as I briefly touched on before, including high sugar and processed foods less frequently, but don't completely eliminate them, because you don't want to feel like that they can't ever have these foods, just for the reasons that I touched on before. However, we know that this is hard, as kids are often fussy eaters and don't want to eat much. Being a fussy eater is very normal, as kids are developing their taste buds, they're learning to be independent, saying no, testing boundaries, which can happen a lot. They're also learning about different tastes, which can seem daunting to them. Anything that's new might be met with resistance, which you might have already seen, and we can also see this as adults too. So an interesting stat of just how fussy eating is real is that it can affect around 20 to 30% of children between the ages of 2 and 6. Around the age of 2 to 3, their energy needs aren't as high as when they were, say, 1. So they may not be as naturally hungry, and this can be one reason why they start to refuse food. It's also a time of when they want to express themselves, be more independent, and that they quickly learn that they can do this with food. So, quick question for you. How many tries do you think it takes to get a child to eat a new food? So just a couple of questions if you want to put down a number, any number. 21, 5, 5, 6, 7 in a row, 10, 30, interesting. Oh, we have a winner. It takes 13 tries to get a child to eat a food. Research says anything between 10 to 16 times. Sometimes it can be, sometimes it can be more, sometimes it can be less. That's quite a lot, isn't it? But if we think back to maybe how many times we've tried something in the past, it may only be 2, 3, or 4 times with no success. So this is why we need the 3 Ps: patience, perseverance, and practice. And this is something that we also promote on the Second Nature programme with any change that we make. And it's also fitting because we know that these are the pillars of parenthood. So patience, keeping calm and having faith in the program, in the process. Also having faith in the program. Persevering with offering foods, make it the new norm to have foods alongside old favourites. And practice the same routine and stick to the guidance. As with anything, learning new habits, doing this can really pay off. So in order to help you with this, we've created some fun games that can help you with this. First, we're going to show you, we've devised some nutrition cards. So the aim of the game is that they can relate to foods, learn what they do for us, and to teach your children about nutrition using real life examples and language that they will understand. So an example I'm going to give you on the screen is, fish is really good for your memory. And it contains something called omega-3. With a good memory, you can ... and then you get them to reply and see what they come up with. So an example that I would give is, remember what you get taught at school, or help you to remember those songs from Frozen that you've heard countless of times over and over again. So another game is the mission game. And this is something that you can print out to get your children involved in cooking, so they learn and hopefully appreciate the food that they've cooked or helped cook. So if your children likes the challenges, this could be one for them. That makes them getting more involved with food, shows them why it takes so long and the effort it can take to make it as well. Can help them also to eat the food if they've been involved in the process. So now I'm going to pass you over to my lovely colleague Simi, who'll be talking a little bit more about other games that we've created and how to build healthy habits for children.
Thank you. Yes, so we will now discuss a bit about our hunger and fullness cues and the reason why this is important for our relationship with food. So it helps to regulate our hunger, which is the main reason why it can really help our relationship with food. And it's important to realize that, children are born intuitive eaters. So babies cry when they're hungry, they'll reject the bottle when they're full. We're born with hormones that tell us when we're full and when we're hungry. But as we get older, we stop knowing how to listen to these cues. Our brains start focusing on, a million other things a day. We're faced with food left, right, and center in abundance. So we just learn to start ignoring these cues, and we can't figure out our true hunger and fullness levels. So our role as parents or, carers is to help our children identify these cues and carry them into adulthood without being led astray by the food environment that they're in. So this also builds autonomy when it comes to eating and helps to find the ability to stop eating when full. So tuning in this way with our kids can be a really helpful way to see what they really want, how they really feel, especially if they're asking you for a certain food. You can ask them how hungry they are. Are you eating out of boredom or any other emotion? Or is it simply just like a taste preference? Maybe they're eating out of palatability. So to help with this, we have built our very own child-friendly hunger scale. So many of you know the hunger scale from the Second Nature programme. This one is colourful, we've got some fun images on it, so hopefully it's more relatable and appealing to children. So you can print this out, you can use it at the dinner table, maybe carry it around with you when you're out and about. So again, tune in with the child, ask them how they feel. Are they hungry or are they filling another gap? So on the scale, you can see we've got different levels of hunger and different feelings in our stomach as well, because we want to aim to be between about a 3 and a 4 most of the time for your child. But children may find it tricky to place themselves on these numbers. So you can ask them how they feel as well. And as you can see on the scale, we've got some descriptions to go with the numbers. So you might want to do this throughout the meal time. You might want to do it at the end when you're bringing the meal time to a close. And this way they can tell if they're comfortably full. And children will hopefully start to recognize this themselves too with practice. So they'll hopefully start to be more aware of what hunger and fullness feels like to them. So next, we really want to talk about creating a healthy mental model. And quite frankly, I would say, especially recently, the diet industry has just destroyed this for us in many ways. And I bet they will continue to do so for our children as well. So the most important thing here is the language used around food. So are we calling food healthy, not healthy? Is it bad? Is it a treat? So all of this type of language creates a moral value around food, and it can put food up on a pedestal. And when foods are high up on this pedestal, kids get curious, they're thinking, why? Why is this chocolate bad? Why is this broccoli good? Why can't I enjoy this ice cream when I'm out with my friends on a play date? So anything that feels off limits automatically feels a bit restrictive. And we all know that this can make us want that food even more. So yes, the main thing, one of the things we want to do is not label food as good or bad, because no food is bad. We want to look at foods in balance, in moderation. Yes, there are some foods we might eat more often if they help us with our health goals, but there's some foods that we might eat less often. But it's not as black as white as this is good, this is bad. And nor are we good or bad for choosing certain foods as well. And we don't want our kids to kind of think that way either about themselves. So here's an example. M&Ms are bad for you, so you can't have any. So maybe if we wanted to change the language here, we can say, M&Ms are foods that we eat sometimes. Are you hungry right now? So again, you might want to refer back to the hunger scale and get them to figure that out for themselves. Another one is using neutral language. So here's a healthy dinner with lots of vegetables, much better than the fish and chips you had for lunch. Instead, a way to change the language here could be, here's a yummy dinner I made for you. The chicken is cooked until it's juicy, the veggies are crispy and seasoned with herbs, and the potatoes are mashed so they're soft and creamy. So in a little while, I am going to show a tool which kind of touches on using these senses with children when they're eating and just getting that eating experience to be more fun for them. And a third way to adopt language with children is introducing the concept of nutrition, which we've just spoken about. It's super important. So for example, this is junk food, we can't have it. But instead you might want to say, let's find a food that can help grow your muscles for that football match you have later on today? How about some fish that's full of protein? And again, this is where those nutrition cards can come in hand. So these are 3 really useful ways to change the language we use around food for our children. So this is showing that we don't have to say, you can't have this is bad. We're changing our language from all of that to, let's see how you're really feeling right now. Is this something you really want? Or is it something you can enjoy another time when you do really want it? Another thing to discuss together is how we soothe emotions with food. So we do this as adults, which is perfectly fine from time to time, but we don't want to set a habit out of this from the get-go. So emotions are complicated. We learn early on how to cope with them because they feel uncomfortable, and we know that we need to address them. But let's take a look at this habit loop. So for example, if something bothers the child, the behavior might be that they cry. So we give them something to soothe them, maybe a chocolate bar or an ice cream, and they may feel relief from that for a short while, but this develops a very strong association in their brain to say, okay, if I feel this way and I cry, I will get this food reward and that will help me to feel better. And this can be really innocent when starting out, but it can then lead to this habitual behavior where in adulthood, we do the exact same thing. We're still stuck in this habit loop. We have a bad day and we want some wine, or it still might be that chocolate bar we used to have all those years ago, or whatever it is. And like I said, this is fine sometimes, but again, it can really mask what it is that we truly need and what emotions we need to address. And so in turn, we start to see food. Oh, Martha's on the call. Hey, Martha. We start to see food, more as a crutch, and rely on food to cope with our emotions. So we don't want this to be the only way that children cope with their emotions. So you may want to start building a toolbox with them to understand their emotions and to soothe them in different ways. So this might be their favorite toy, maybe journaling together, taking a walk, or even just a big hug. And I got this tip from Jen. I know she's a big fan of Martha hugs. So yeah, ask them what they're really feeling and what's happening. Maybe they're just hungry, maybe they're just cranky. And again, you can use the hunger scale to check in and see how they're feeling. But yeah, anything to notice, calm, and connect with their emotions, and just open up an honest conversation about how they're feeling. And lastly, we just want everyone to enjoy food for what it is. So we love food. We're all foodies to some extent, and so are our children. And we're lucky to have access to such a variety of food in our day-to-day lives. So yeah, let's appreciate it for what it does give us. And it's a big part of our celebrations, our relationships, our culture. And nutrition is great, but it's not something that rigidly needs to be controlled all the time, because food is such a positive thing, and children should definitely be brought up to see it this way as well. At Second Nature, we love developing tasty recipes. We believe in true food, so not diet shakes or bland foods that we don't enjoy. So one way that we can enjoy food is through mindful eating. There we go. And this is something that we learn over the programme. And we thought that this could be something really cool to teach your children as well. So we've come up with these mindful eating cards, which you can turn into an experience at the dinner table or even a game with your children. So asking them to use their senses. So how does this food look? Think of the colours, the shapes. What do you hear when you bite into it? How does it feel on your tongue? So get them to really enjoy the food in front of them. And asking these kind of sensory questions can really help them to connect with their food and appreciate it and savor it. So when kids are aware of the sensory pleasures of food, they're more likely to feel satisfied as well. So it can hopefully help reduce challenges like fussy eating and reward-based eating. So this is something that you can use, and all of the resources we've shared today, actually, you can use with different ages and different ways. So we would love to hear your feedback or if you do try any of these out. But yeah, the mindful eating one is definitely something that you can adapt for different ages as well. So our takeaway messages: make meal times fun and educational. So this might just be going on a supermarket tour with them, packing their lunch boxes together before school, cooking and meal planning together. And as we keep saying, really teaching them about nutrition so that they can understand food and how it works in their body. Don't label foods as good and bad, so keep it neutral, encourage variety. This is really key for a balanced outlook on diet and food. Using non-food rewards, so think about what their favourite thing is to do: playtime, reading a book, going to a park, anything else that can get them to feel really good in that moment. Be in it for the long haul, so remember the 3 Ps. Patience, perseverance, and practice. There we go. So yeah, these are really great ideas to just bring some grounding to any situation. Role model healthy eating behaviours. So remember, children are always learning from us. They're always listening, they're observing, they're picking up our behaviours and habits. So yeah, they're always looking up to us as a role model. So remember that, and maybe consider the language that you use around food with them. There is no need to be perfect. So this is 1 P that we do not need. There's no such thing. There's no reason whatsoever to strive for perfection. And what's perfect to you and your family is all that counts. And enjoy food. So this is, in my opinion, the biggest one, the biggest take-home message. Enjoy food, and yes, use those mindful eating tips if you feel that that's something that's really going to bring some fun and enjoyment to your meal times, and something that can help kids to appreciate food and therefore enjoy it even more. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. We now have some time for questions, and I believe, are there any in the chat? No?
There are a few, yeah. Firstly, I just want to say thank you. That was so good. Lots of food for thought. We have a couple of questions coming in, but if anyone does have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A, and we've got plenty of time to go through them. The first question, sorry about the sunlight. The first question is from Jacqueline. And she's mentioned that she's worried that her granddaughter, who's 6, eats a packet of crisps a day. Would this give her too much salt? Is there any advice around that? What would you say to that?
Yeah, of course. So I'm happy to take this one, give Simi a bit of a break. So yeah, thank you very much for your question, Jacqueline. And it's lovely to hear that you are concerned. However, I just want to hopefully reassure you that a packet of crisps is not going to give her too much salt. So 6-year-olds, they need about 3 grams of salt a day, give or take. And depending on what type of crisps that she has, it's very much like lower than what they need to have. So for example, a packet of Pom Bears has less than 0.2 grams of salt in it. And like a packet of Walkers, they might be a little bit more, about 0.3 grams. So it's not going to cause her to eat too much salt in a day. If anything, it's more about everything else that she's having. So looking at kind of all the other foods that she is to have that day. A little bit of salt is actually good for us. So as we talk about on the programme, kind of it helps kind of our body work really well. So I wouldn't worry too much about the crisps. I hope that helps.
That's really helpful. And I think as well, like you both mentioned throughout the webinar, it's about that balance, isn't it? And creating that balance. What else are we having in our diet aside from the crisps? And that language around food. Simi, you talked through 3 really helpful things around the language we use around food. So yeah, we're having the crisp, but what else are we having in the diet as well?
Excellent. And then the next one I can see, can I use the second nature recipes for my children? Absolutely. As I mentioned before, it's just about portion size. So a lot of the second nature recipes, we look at getting them plenty of veg in there, having the fat servings and the protein. So it's just about adjusting kind of their portions to the kids' balance plates that we're talking about before.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and remember, like with any recipes, just getting them involved with, picking ones out that they like, looking at the ingredients, picking, going shopping for the ingredients together and cooking them. So these are things that can really widen, their variety with different recipes as well, whether they're second nature or not.
Absolutely. And if you are working with a health coach or in any of the communities, we have a brilliant guide on a lot of our family favorite second nature recipes that have been put together that are tried and tested by families on the program too. So if you are interested, let your health coach know in your group or your community, and they can send that over to you as well. There's a great question from Francis. So any advice from when it feels like you're fighting a losing battle with the kids at meal times? So I think you gave some tips in the webinar, but yeah, any advice on that when you feel like, oh, this is not going my way?
I feel like that most days of parenting. As Nat mentioned, we kind of briefly discussed that, the 3 Ps. So just keep practicing, just keep persevering. I know I discuss it with a lot of kind of my mum friends, is that they feel like their child isn't getting enough nutrition. They will get what they need. And it's hard to think sometimes, gosh, they've not eaten enough and I've given them too many snacks. It will take time. It will take perseverance. Just keep trying. Practice self-compassion. That is one of my biggest kind of takeaway tips here. Look after yourselves. It's a very stressful time being a parent. It can feel like we're constantly like going through the vicious cycle or running kind of like on a hamster wheel. I always like to think of it as. So yeah, all we can do is just try our best. If it doesn't happen one day, it might happen another. So just keep at it and just keep faith, basically. But yeah, there's a lot that we can do. But there's a lot of things that we can't do as well. So it's just looking and communicating, I'd say, as well with your child is a big thing.
Yeah, I was going to take the self-compassion route as well. We know that there isn't a one size that fits all. What works for one family might not work for another, and each child and parent is unique, and each situation and home environment is different. So we all have our own ways of doing things, and everyone has their own parenting styles, which is fantastic. So like Jen said, just keep the faith in yourself as a parent. You're the real experts, really. You know what's best for your child. So yeah, just that perseverance, but definitely that self-compassion as well.
And I love the tip that Louise has just put on, so always try and dish up food separately in bowls, a bit like a buffet, so it's a bit kind of, they've got the control over that. So thank you so much for that tip. And Marianne as well, like the more control that they have, the more motivated they are. So I can tell that you're a parent just by writing that.
Totally. And I think Louise's comment about dishing things up leads us nicely on to Peter's question about how we should approach children's multiple stomachs. So full for a main course, but suddenly lots of room for pudding. And interestingly, Peter, that is actually a real scientific thing, not just for children. There's a reason behind that. I won't go into it now, but it's a real thing. But yeah, any advice on how we can approach that with kids,
I mean, I was going to say, is it just children? Adult, like literally, you can be stuffed. Like if you think about Christmas or even just Easter, you're like, oh, I can't eat another thing, and then you see the hot cross bun of the Easter egg, and you think, just manage a bit of that. Or if you're my dad, a little bit of cheese. Always room for a bit of cheese. Yeah. But one thing I think could work really well is the hunger fullness scale with this. So like I've got older nieces and nephews, and they'll always be like, oh, they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, I don't want any more, but can I have some chocolate? Can I have some pudding? So using that example of being like, are you actually hungry for it? Are you still full? Or is it just a craving? Ask them if they want to drink instead, maybe distract them for a bit, say, go and play for a bit, and then I'll ask you in a bit if you would still like something. And they might be distracted, very similar as we are. If we wait 15-20 minutes, you may find that actually that craving's gone. So that's just one of my kind of hints and tips on that. I don't know if you have any more, Simi, on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, again, apologies, the sun is setting right behind me and I look kind of spooky right now. But
Not
yeah,
very glamorous, I have to say. I'm loving this shade.
yeah, so going back to the balanced plate as well, making sure that they do have a variety of foods with their meal. And this way, you know, you're exposing them to different tastes and textures. You can try some mindful eating with that, which might just make them feel a bit more satisfied with, you know, what they are eating, or even if it is, you know, something sweet or some dessert, having the mindful eating cards with them just so that they can really tune in with their satisfaction cues as well as their hunger cues, and that can make a real difference as well. So it's not just kind of something that they see and they think it's exciting and they want to just quickly gobble it down, and then, you know, they might want more after that. So yeah, just taking your time with tuning in with how they feel and what it is that they really want.
Yeah. And then just my sort of tip that Louise sort of shared, maybe, you know, dishing things up and having sort of like a tapas style, and sweet foods are on there too. And maybe, you know, like the Jen and Simi said in the webinar, kids are really good at regulating their own hunger and fullness. And whilst we might think, you know, if there's some sweet foods on there, they might always go for that. Initially, yes, they might reach for that, but over time they might decide, oh, you know, those vegetables look really good as well. So putting things out together, even if it might seem like a strange combination, but letting them have the choice and autonomy over, I'm going to have a bit of this and a bit of savoury food too.
100%. I really agree with that. And there's a lot of research out there to say that that does actually work. So it's not putting the sweet food on a pedestal, so everything is then seen as equal. That's a really good point, Nat. Thank you for raising that one.
We have another question from Majir. Hope I've said your name correctly. My son does not like eating breakfast, and so sometimes we have to skip it before nursery, so then he has 2 portions of lunch. Any tips on getting him to spread out his meals a little bit more, or maybe on that sort of encouraging breakfast a bit more?
Yeah, so I can see, thank you for letting us know that he's 3 in July. So at this age, he may not find that he's actually hungry first thing in the morning. And that's absolutely fine. Like, he's trying to regulate his hunger. There's a couple of things like, does he have a snack mid-morning at nursery? Is it possible, depending on the setup that you have at the nursery, could he possibly eat some breakfast at nursery? Or if you don't get it provided there, could you take the breakfast there? Just so then he might have it around his peers. Another thing is just look at the breakfast foods that he might want. So if you're trying, say, for example, toast, maybe try some porridge. There's some mornings that Martha can wolf down a bowl of porridge, followed by half of her dad's crumpet and then an apple and a banana, and other days she'll just have half a banana. If they're distracted or they just want to get to nursery, or if they're still a bit tired. So I would just have a play around with the foods that you offer them, maybe the times of what they have, if they're still on milk or if they've had a drink or something. So I'd maybe have a look at what is the child's routine in the morning, try out some of the tips that we've put here, making the environment a bit more kind of, well, not saying more, but making it like a friendly atmosphere. But sometimes just be led by the child. If they don't want to eat first thing, that's absolutely fine. Maybe speak with the nursery and maybe try some of the tips that I mentioned about the snacks or taking breakfast there.
Yeah, that's really good advice, Jen. Yeah, I was going to say, you know, if it's a hunger thing or is it more of like an interest thing? So if it is an interest thing, definitely try some of the tips that we've been through today. The one that comes to mind are those mission cards. You might want to adapt them for, you know, his age, but yeah, just getting breakfast to seem more interesting to him. So is it something you can choose together, maybe go shopping for together? Yeah, just making it a bit more fun and something that's a bit more appealing, perhaps.
And that's a really good tip from Marianne as well. Sometimes her kids like smoothies, so it seems more of a drink rather than actually sitting in the high chair or at the table with a bowl. So it might just feel a little bit more kind of easy for them to do. So thank you for that tip, Marianne.
And then there's just a final question, which is more around someone that doesn't yet have children, but her husband and her are both vegan, and just wondering if a vegan diet is safe for children. So there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration with a child's development and growth. So what I would say to that is do your research, maybe speak to a dietitian and think about how that can be carefully planned at a suitable age. What I will do is I'll send you the BDA resource for you to have a look at, and if that's something that is helpful for you in the future, it will just talk through all the different nutrients that need to be taken into consideration when planning to start a plant-based diet for anyone. So I hope that's helpful.
I second that now. That's great.
Fab. That is our final question, unless anyone else has any more.
We've got one in the webinar chat. So with this one, I would actually speak to your health visitor about this one, just because it's quite specific to your son on that one. I hope that's okay. But yeah, it might be worth just reaching out to them about that.
Yeah, and I think as well, yeah, I think that's great advice as well. Fab. So that is all the questions from us. Yeah, do you want to pop on to the next slide, Simi? So I know a few of you were asking about the resources that Jen and Simi shared. So I just want to let you know that you can download these games and the resources, as well as loads of other resources that we have on page.secondnature.io/parents. If anyone has that to hand, can anyone type that in the chat just so that people can have the direct link to that? And yeah, if you do use these with your children, we would absolutely love your feedback on them, because they're a work in progress. We're developing them. So we would love to know, do your kids like them? How old are your kids when you're using them with them, and how did it go? How was the experience? And we'd love to hear this in the feedback in the parents community. So if you're not already a member of the parents community, I'm the health coach over there at the moment. So you can join the parents community if you look on the right hand side of the slide. So if you go to the chat section of the app, explore all communities, and then click parents, you can join that community. So any feedback on that, pop that there. I'll be around tomorrow just to discuss this with you as well. And also as well, this is a project that we're really passionate about, and we're really wanting to expand on it. So we're looking for partners where we can run these types of webinars. So if you did enjoy this and you know any schools or communities that you feel would benefit from this type of thing, we would really appreciate an introduction. So if you know anyone, please let us know. So all of this information we will send up in a follow-up email tomorrow morning. So if you have anyone that that springs to mind, please reply to that email and get in touch, because we'd love to hear from you. And that is everything. So thank you, Simi and Marianne, for sharing the link in the chat too. So if you are keen to download any of those games, use them with your kids, feedback to us, that would be really, really appreciated, and we hope you enjoy them as well. So that is all from us. We hope you found it really helpful. Thank you so much, Jen and Simi. It was really helpful, and a really great way to think about how we can positively influence our children's relationship with food.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Bye.